Oh, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition, a gather-round edition of the Weekend Wrap, brought to you by CrowCast, of course. An amazing weekend of football here in South Australia. It's been so good to have everyone, all our football supporting cousins from the eastern states and from the western state, over for a fantastically successful round of footy. And Mac, I'm sure you'll agree that well deserved that we were able to get it for another go.
Yeah, look, it was an absolutely outstanding success, Fiend. I mean, starting off with ourselves, opening it on a premium night and performing, and then all the games being sold out. It doesn't matter whether people went there or not; it was sold out. That's the most important thing. The amount of tourists that come to the city, adding about, I think they said about 80 odd million to the economy on top of that, and then to get it for another 3 years on top of that. And it's going to go out into the Barossa next year, and they will come in hordes.
Absolutely. And look, welcome to everyone who's joined us on Discord and also on YouTube. Hopefully we get some rabble in from the interstate teams joining in just for the sake of it. But look, I don't think anyone really could have foreseen just how successful it was, Mac.
Well, when you think about it, though, Fiend, it's logical for South Australia in the sense that we are a footy state. We're not like New South Wales, for example, that's rugby and soccer and everything else. And West Australia is a long way away, but Victorians can drive to South Australia. They can fly to South Australia very quite cheaply. So it was obvious that it's got to be us. And I had no doubt Malinauskas would go all out to make it as good as it was. And, when he sets his mind to something, he achieves it. And I think he did an outstanding job in, I know he didn't do all the organising, but firstly getting it and making sure that it all happened.
Yeah, and not only that, the fact that we were able to put it together in such a short space of time, apparently our government actually approached the AFL around grand final week last year with the concept. So we did sort of drive it, but we only had 4 or 5 months to prepare. And the good thing is that next year we're going to have a full 12 months. Everything will be organised. There'll probably be far more events, as you say, maybe a game in the Barossa or a couple. And it can only get bigger and better. And I think a 3-year rotation is about right, Macca. I think after 3 or 4 years, you're probably not getting stale, but people are probably looking for a little bit of a change. So I reckon a 3 or 4 year rotation is probably pretty decent.
I think it's absolutely spot on, because if you had it every year, it's a bit like the Formula One was starting to get stale here in Adelaide.
No, it wasn't.
Well, I did go to the first 5 thing, but admittedly it was corporate and free. So, but I didn't. When I changed jobs, I didn't get my invite, so I didn't go. But no, I think you're right. I think the 4 years is just about right, because next year we'll fine tune it and make it even better, and people will rave about it. And then the year after that, they'll expect it to be really, really good, and it will be. And the 4th year is probably going to be the questionable one, but I think that if you really do such a good job as we did this year, we'll do even better next year. And I think refine a little third, we'll have a good 4th, and then it's time to call it quits.
Yep, I think so. And it'll be interesting to see who gets it next. I'll tell you what I have noticed just before we move on, the amount of dirt pieces in News Corp this weekend about not only about the gather round concept, but also about it not being in New South Wales and being in Adelaide and all the rest of it. The Murdoch press are very, very salty. A, that the AFL stole the Magic Round concept or borrowed it, and B, that they didn't put it in dear old New South Wales.
Yeah, okay. I don't think it's going to work that good in New South Wales, mate, because it's just a scattered, great big heap of suburbs, and I just don't think they're going to get the numbers if they do, if they put it there.
I agree. I think it should work reasonably well in Brisbane. I think it'll work quite well in Western Australia, although I think they're going to have to be very careful when they send it over there with regards to scheduling, because it is a long trip for most people, particularly those in the eastern states. So, but anyway, that's for the future, and at the moment, it's our concept and it's our baby for the next few years, and I'm already looking forward to next year, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it can only work in Brisbane because of the fact that while you've got to pay a really high fare, like saying we would for Western Australia, but not quite as much. At least there's a lot to do when you get there. They've got the Gold Coast, etc. So there's a lot of side distractions up there, which would help make it work. And I think Brisbane's the only other state that can really attract people from around Australia, apart from South Australia.
Yep. Well, they're going to have whoever gets it next, and some people are saying Tassie. I don't think they. I mean, Tassie, it's struggled to get 15 grand to a game, so I don't think Tassie'd work. No. I could see a combination of Melbourne and Tassie work, but why would you gather around in Melbourne when they've already got everything? But whoever does get it is going to have a lot to live up to, because I think we're going to be setting a pretty high bar by the end of it, and good on us. And look, the other thing that I'll point out, Macca, and I'll be interested in your thoughts on this, for people of our generation, didn't it remind you of the good old days when the SANFL was strong and you had 8 great rounds of footy in South Australia every week in the SANFL? Didn't it remind you of that? People that didn't experience growing up with the SANFL don't know what they're missing out on, but this weekend they probably got a taste of it.
Well, it's interesting. It's very interesting that you say that, Dean, because apart from our game, which obviously is my favourite game, your favourite game, everybody who's here's favourite game, I love the Norwood game, watching the Norwood game.
Yeah.
It did bring back all those memories. And and I said to Mrs. Macca, God, Norwood looks bloody beautiful. And I said, this is lovely. And even the Mount Barker one, I thought to myself, this is fantastic. And, just different. Away from the normal AFL grind of, the main ovals, etc. I just thought it was magic.
Yeah, so, it's good for the younger generation to get a taste of what a full 8 rounds of high-grade football is like in one location, because that's what we grew up with every week, mate. Every week, that's what we had. Yep.
Yes, I screamed out abuse from the stands every week.
Well, I remember going with my grandfather, though, who was a dyed-in-the-wool Norwood supporter, to the Norwood Oval quite regularly. And when I switched to Sturt at a young age, he was heartbroken, but he used to still order me a membership every year and would go twice a year, and I'd still get the bloody Redlegs review every month or however long it came out. But yeah, lots of good memories at Norwood. So look, fantastic. And congratulations to the government and the AFL and everyone who was associated with putting that together in such a short space of time. I thought Mount Barker was great. Norwood, as you said, Mac, was fantastic. And imagine how much they can build on it with a bit of forward planning next year, a bit of time.
Yeah, and also, as PJ says in the chat, Elder Park setup was absolutely sensational. I mean, it was just... they did it in style, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And the riverfront looked great. The footy show this morning on TV, even though... Why didn't the footy show cover the Crows game this morning? They said they were going to, and that's the only reason I watched the damn thing, and they didn't do it.
No, they were just talking all SANFL stuff.
It was really bizarre. It was bizarre. Anyway. All right, let's move on. And, of course, before we get to the round the grounds, Mac, we had a fantastic win on Thursday night, which seemed so long ago I had to rewatch it just to remind myself. But, my goodness me, that first quarter, I haven't seen us play that well for a long time.
Oh, we absolutely blitzkrieg Carlton in that first quarter, and I thought it was sensational footy. And it is as well as we've ever played. And you've got to go back when we had really good sides back in 2017. But I just thought the style we played was just absolutely electric. I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah. A lot of people comparing it to, 2017 and particularly, that famous prelim against Geelong. In
Yep.
some ways, yes, but I just feel like when we play that way, and obviously that's not sustainable for 4 quarters, but when we get on a roll like that, there's a bit more. It's coming from a bit more of a solid base, whereas everything in 2017 was free flowing and all the rest of it. But I just feel like the style of playing the play that we're utilising at the moment, and we'll talk about this more later, but it just feels more solid to me. It doesn't feel quite as flaky.
No, no, because does have a solid base to it. I agree with you, Pete. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, let's talk about the weekend's results, shall we? And we should just bypass quickly. What am I doing? Here we are. All right. So, apart from our game on the Thursday night, we had Freo and the Suns battling it out on Friday afternoon. Freo getting up in the end by 10 points, 100 to 90, was one that the Suns really threw away, in my opinion. Bad kicking, Jack Lukosius, bad kicking, a few other, and they just fell away. And Stuart Dew would have been terribly disappointed with that.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I thought Jack Lukosius, this was his breakout game. It's taken him a long time to play a game of this quality, and he was a number 2 draft pick, and he looked like a number 2 draft pick in this game. He was outstanding. So they had that going for him, and yeah, and it looked like Gold Coast had Freo on toast at one stage, but but when it came down to the crunch, no, I think Stuart Dew's in trouble. They can't finish off, and Freo got them in the end. And I wouldn't say it was a memorable game for him by any standards, but from Freo's point of view, it was important, and it was just as important for Gold Coast. And if I was Stuart Dew, I'd start to get a little bit twitchy.
Yeah, look, they just should have won that game. There's no two ways about it. It was just a game they should have won. For no other reason that I picked them in my footy tips, Mac.
Oh, that says it all.
Exactly. In the evening game, on Friday night, Sydney gave Richmond a bit of a walloping in the end. It was tight for a while, not a high standard game, and that one quarter that went for 37 minutes. I was watching it with my mate, and we're thinking, have they just forgotten to blow the siren? What's going on?
Yeah, look, it was interesting because, both sides went in seriously undermanned, that they each had 3 very good players out. But Richmond always say, they can still play footy. Well, at half time it was Sydney by 7 points, but after, particularly in the last quarter, Sydney ran away with the game, and they've got some stars up, and still got some stars that play very well. Papley got, I think it was 6 goals. Blakey was outstanding in defence, and you have to say with Richmond, they got in Hopper and Taranto. I don't think they look any better for it.
No, I'm a big fan and always have been of Hopper. Taranto, I was certainly keen on him in his draft year, but his disposal and some of his decision making was pretty poor. Look, I think that it was very evident with Richmond that they are an arrogant football team, and even Damien Hardwick recognised it after the game. Some of their undisciplined acts, they've always sort of been a bit like that, but now you've got to be able to back it up, and it's all right when you can back it up, but when you can't back it up and you've just got to knuckle down and play footy, I think they're struggling a little bit in that regard at the moment. I think they don't have enough weapons. With Lynch out, they looked a little bit insipid up forward, and they've got a bit of an attitude problem in my opinion.
Yeah. I just think they've had their good days, and they're going to sort of join the pack a bit. I think that's just my opinion, anyhow.
Yeah, it's pretty we couldn't knock them off. Look, on Saturday, we had the early game at Mount Barker. The Lions getting up very, very comfortably. North will be disappointed with that. The Lions 152 to North 77. The Lions by 75 points in the end.
I enjoyed the game. Well, as much as you could. The Lions, I actually like the attitude, where it was played, the atmosphere, where it's played up at Mount Barker. I love the Oval. And I think they've done an outstanding job because the playing surface was immaculate, absolutely immaculate. And
it's a nice ground.
Yep. But, North Melbourne started okay, but then that was the end. And, Hipwood was firing and, the ball was just being driven in there all the time. And Danaher was firing, then the midfield was firing. It just became a one-sided game. In fact, I ended up flicking away, off the game after a while because it was obvious where it was headed.
Yeah, North just haven't got any bookends. They haven't got a bad midfield, but they haven't got any bookends really. And their scoring was dried up pretty quickly. So. Anyway, the other game, the mid-afternoon game, was Essendon Melbourne, and this wasn't a bad game at all. Essendon 27-point winners in the end, 104 to 77, and Melbourne also just looking a little bit off the boil at the moment.
Well, that was really, it was a 27-point upset, but that was really set up. There was a period with 7 unanswered goals in spanning the second and third quarters, and they tagged Oliver, and Oliver had 2 possessions in the first quarter. I think he got it up to about 12 or 14 at half time, but it ended up with 41. And that's how good he is.
Yeah.
But the damage was done, and I thought Essendon played good flowing football. They really did, and their own midfield was outstanding in the sense Merritt and he's the other blokes. I always forget him, the little fella. He gets a lot of the ball. Doesn't matter. But their midfield was too good, and they got so many opportunities, and their ruckman was really good, and he kicked 3 goals. Paris, thank you. Paris was a name I couldn't remember. And, I wouldn't mind somebody says Redmond or Crow next year. Well, he's a free agent. I don't know whether he's got available or not, but he'll be good.
I'm told that we're heavily into him. Whether he comes over or not is another thing. But there's a couple of free agents that we're heavily into, and there's another one that performed quite well this afternoon that we'll get to in a minute. But Redmond did play well. I thought Draper played well as well. I wouldn't mind him.
Draper, Draper's re-signed. He's
I know.
He's off.
Yeah, I know. I wouldn't have minded him running around, but Redmond's certainly on our radar. All right, and then the Saturday night game was Port v the Bulldogs, and I was bitterly disappointed by the Bulldogs, Macca. Port getting up by 14 points in the end in horrific conditions, it must be said, 70 to 56.
Yeah, I'll let you talk about this game, Fee, because being at the party, I did watch the last 10 minutes of the game, but I'll leave it up to you.
Well, I mean, I watched bits and pieces of it. It was probably Zach Butters' coming of age game, I guess. He played very well. I also thought Port benefited from more output from Rosie. And, of course, Jason Horne-Francis had a good last quarter. But the Western Bulldogs just aren't the same team. They didn't play the conditions well. They didn't seem to be cohesive. I don't know whether they know how to use Norton up forward. I don't know. They just don't seem connected. And I wouldn't be surprised if Beveridge, if some questions are asked about Beveridge, if they don't get a wriggle on. But they're not looking like it at the moment.
Look, they've got a lot of good players in their side too, Pete. I mean, it's not like they are short of... and they may be in certain areas, but gee, they've got some really star players, and but they don't perform to the level of what they've got.
No, and as Firewalker points out in the chat, some weird things like they had English offered a very key part of the game, Pontempelli offered a very key part of the game. it's very strange. I've often thought that Beveridge tries to outsmart himself sometimes, and he's not a smart fella, so it's not very hard to outsmart himself. But of course, the big talking point as well was, and this was very interesting because obviously being part of the Saturday games, there appeared to be a lot of North Melbourne supporters at that Port Adelaide game, and they were giving Jason Horne-Francis everything, and to the extent where it was made an issue post-game by Ken Hinkley. Interested in your thoughts on that, Mac?
He's left, he's gone, just leave it at that. I don't see any point what to carry about it. North Melbourne can only blame themselves. They took him in the first place when they had some fantastic offers to trade that pick number one. In fact, for us, it worked out absolutely fine because we ended up with Dawson, Rochelle and Rankin with what we offered. But, look, North Melbourne, wear it. Just wear it. He's gone.
Yeah, it's not just North Melbourne. He's been booed in other games in Victoria by, Collingwood fans and all that. I thought Ken made a very good point in the post match, and it's ironic that there's so much media around this when really it's the media that has driven a lot of this. He's a 19-year-old kid. Now, if my 19-year-old kid was out playing football and people were giving him shit, I'd be extremely disappointed, and I'd be pointing fingers at those people that probably have 19-year-old kids of their own going, is that the way you treat your own kid? I think there's a big difference between having a crack at a grown man and having a crack at a second-year player who's not even 20 yet. And you can have your opinion about Horne-Francis, and that's all well and good, but it's clearly affecting the kid, and I just don't think it's necessary, and I don't think it's terribly mature, to be honest with you.
Well, as I only saw a part of the last quarter, and in what I did see, he went very well in it.
Had a great last quarter.
Yep.
Had a really good last quarter. Was instrumental in them getting over the line. I just, there's been various players booed over the course of the journey. Adam Goodes comes to mind, obviously, but Adam Goodes incited some of that, in my opinion, and also was a grown-ass man, not a 19-year-old kid. And I just feel like the media, the way the media has turned into tabloid press around AFL football over the last 10 years or so really contributes to the mass pile-ons that happen on social media and, now at the footy grounds and all the rest of it. So the media can't throw its hands up and go, everyone's terrible because they're giving him a hard time, because they've been implicit in this. Complicit.
Totally agree.
Anyway, we'll move on from that. And then today, Geelong played for a quarter and a bit and got their margin. They could have won this by 200 points if they'd have tried the whole game. Their second quarter was fantastic. Ended up winning by 47, 136 to 89 over West Coast, who are in serious trouble.
Yeah, they had a run of 12 goals in a row at one stage, and it looked like they were going to win by 1 million goals. But they went into second gear, just cruised to the line, and West Coast, they got a few goals back, and in the end, it looked like quite a respectable loss. But there was a massive difference in the quality between the two teams.
Oh, 100%. There's no doubt that the Cats took their foot off the pedal. It's almost impossible not to in those circumstances. The game was done at halftime, and that was that. Now, the next game, the afternoon game, was a cracker, and it came down to the wire, and future Crow Harry Himmelberg was the star at both ends. First of all, doing a cornsy and taking a hang to kick the winning goal, and then being on the last line of defence a couple of minutes later to just get a finger on Jared Impey's attempt, and the Giants end up winning by 2.
You stole my whole thunder there, Fee, because my man Harry, as I call him, exactly what you just said. I mean, he took a screamer with 90 seconds to go and kicked the goal and put them in front. And as you said, the opposition roared down there in the last dying seconds and had a shot for goal, which looked like it was going to be a goal until my man Harry leapt up and touched it and saved the game. And look, I tell you what, there wouldn't be a better swingman in the competition, I don't think. He can play full back, centre half back, centre half forward, full forward, and we should be really into him at 100 mile an hour. Him and Redmond, just go 100 mile an hour at him.
Yeah, absolutely. It was lovely to see the Himmelberg clan in South Australia this weekend. They would have enjoyed the hospitality. I think they've moved down here, haven't they?
I think I did read that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they've moved down here. So
is that a sign?
Oh well, I mean, depends on who you listen to. Some of the people that I listen to have pretty much got it over the line, but you can never know about these things.
Yeah, well, anyhow, Dawson will be in their ears because, I mean, he was in Rankins here. And
Yeah. No, I would love to have Harry here. He's, as you say, he's a very versatile player, Macca, and he was certainly instrumental in their win. Overall, though, the Giants would have been disappointed that it got that close. I mean, Hawthorn played well, but the Giants would have penciled this in as a win going into the game. And irrespective of, the unfamiliar conditions and all the rest of it, they would have been disappointed it got as close as this.
But if you look at the history of GWS, this is who they are. They keep winning the games. They keep losing the games with a team. And if you look at the players, they've got the quality of the players they've got compared to the opposition. They've got better quality players, and they lose.
Yeah. Still not right there. Anyway, and the late game this afternoon was also a very good game, and St Kilda sneaking up at the end there, nearly turning it into a draw, but Collingwood hanging on by 6 points, 70 to 64.
Yeah, it was an interesting game because it was played on Ross Lyon's terms. It was an absolute Ross Lyon game where, nothing easy. Defence was very, very strong by both sides, and to get a goal was so important if you could get a goal. And it sort of looked anybody's game until there was just a few minutes towards the end where Collingwood got a couple in a row, and they got 3 goal up. And you thought it's all over, but they got one at the 151 minute mark. And then they got another one, no, 121 minute mark, sorry. And then they got another one at the 51 minute mark. And they had 51 seconds to get a draw, and they tried, but it was a good game. It was hard fought, but it wasn't high quality because it was very, very defensive in terms of both sides. I thought Dacos was outstanding, in terms of not being defensive. He's so good. And Marshall was outstanding for St Kilda, but. It was a good game, and Collingwood too good in the end.
Look, the only thing I'll say to that is you're right, Macca. It was played on Ross Lyon's terms, and I think ultimately that's always been the criticism of Ross Lyon teams, is that they will never destroy a team. The games are always low scoring, and therefore the opposition are always in it, right? And I wonder whether he can evolve, because the game is being played by the exciting teams at the moment in a very attacking manner. You look at the way Collingwood play, Essendon play, Adelaide, very attacking football, put on a big score very quickly. And I don't know whether Ross Lyon's shutdown game is going to get them over the line, simply because you're always keeping the opposition in it.
I think you're right, and I think they'll win a lot of games against the lesser side, but I don't think they can win a final, or certainly not major finals with that style of game. Yeah,
I mean, look, they've put on some scores this year, don't get me wrong, but it's not been against great opposition. And, you come up against a team like Collingwood who are skilled enough to withstand that and to match the pressure. and all of a sudden it turns into a bit of a scrub. And I think this is where Ross has always fallen over, is that against really good teams, it's not good enough to keep the opponent at arm's length. You've actually got to put some scoreboard distance on them, and I think that's where his game plan struggles.
Exactly. I see Frampton mentioned in the chat, and I must admit, Billy didn't disgrace himself. He actually did some good things. I mean, he's still Billy, and he's never going to be a star, but he wasn't too bad.
Yeah, and look, shout out to Brad Crouch, who had an excellent game and is really thriving over there. And we were never a big fan. Well, I never was a big fan of Brad in the Adelaide system, and you could argue that the system itself was imploding at that point, and probably was better for everyone that Brad moved on. But it's good to see the lad having some success over there.
Had a great game today.
Yeah, absolutely. That leaves us with the ladder, Macca. St Kilda and Essendon and Collingwood are now equal on 16 points, separated by a percentage, of course. Carlton alone in fourth with a terrible percentage, but the benefit of a draw. Then we've got the Swans, Melbourne, Adelaide and Brisbane inside the 8 on 12 points. And then we have outside the 8 on 12 points Port Adelaide. What odds are Port Crows final again this year, mate? It's let's not jump the gun, but wouldn't that be good again?
Only if we won, mate.
Yeah. Geelong sneaking up now on 8 points, although they haven't really beaten anyone special yet. I love Geelong's percentage of 119. Freo and the Giants and North and Western Bulldogs also on 2 wins. Richmond on a win and a half, looking shaky. The Suns, West Coast and Hawthorn, and this is where the Suns should be embarrassed, Hawthorn are right at the bottom of their rebuild. West Coast are ravaged by injuries. Gold Coast, as far as I'm aware, are reasonably full strength, and yet there they are sitting with the other two.
That's what I say. I think Stuart Dew's not the answer, and
I don't think it's the coach, Mac. I don't think it's the coach.
What do you think it is then?
I just think it's the culture up there. It's not a football state. It's not. At least Brisbane have the benefit of the Fitzroy connection and the Lions history and being the first, and but set up far more like a football club. There's not been a lot of teams that have been successful over the period in the Gold Coast, and I don't know. I just, they don't play. They play games of football like training drills. They don't. There's no grit about them, is there?
No, but if you look at back how the Brisbane Lions used to be, until they brought in Fagan, and they brought in a top administrator, which they stole from us originally. Until you make it a proper football club, it's obviously not a proper football club in the way it's run, in the sense that...
Mac, are you suffering from memory loss? Brisbane were the most powerful side of the early 2000s.
No, I'm going back before that, yeah. They did.
That's what I mean. When they joined up with the Lions and they got Lynch and all that, and they got a bit of history about them, and they stopped being the Bears. That's when they started becoming powerful, and of course they benefited a bit from draft stuff and all the rest of it. But they were a bloody good football team and well respected. Whereas Gold Coast just don't shape up to me like a football team. It's almost like an exhibition club.
Yeah, well, it doesn't look like real footy, does it?
No, not really.
Well, they don't. They just, as you said, they don't look like they care like lots of other teams do.
No, I don't think so. I'm sure they care, but it's a bit like trying. There's trying and then there's trying, right? And I don't know. Anyway, let's move on because we're a Crows podcast, and of course, the Crows had probably their best win for the season, I'd say, Mac, to this point. 18 goals, 10, 118, 56-point winners over Carlton, 9 goals, 8, 62, if you don't mind, and underpinned by an absolutely electric first quarter, as we said in the intro, the likes of which we haven't seen for quite some time.
No, and also it was the quality of the football. It wasn't the fact that we just bulldozed or anything like that. It was just the quality of it. And the move of Dawson into the middle was a magic. It just made a whole game from the middle totally different. I mean, I see that when they're talking about Dawson and rating him as a midfielder, he's rated as the best midfielder in the game at the moment on his performances. And you've got Laird, who's he's got the grunt, and Dawson's got the class, and made a crocodile difference.
Yeah, it's so pleasing that the club finally decided to tune into the CrowCast because the selection decisions they've made since doing that after the loss to Richmond in round 2 have been spot on, and we've seen the results. But look, Geordie into the midfield has been a revelation. I don't think anyone, even his most ardent supporter, would have realised exactly how successful that. And we're only 2 games in. Let's not forget, we're only 2 games in to that move, and he is going to come under a lot of scrutiny. But I don't think there's anyone that really thought that it would be as successful and that he would be as successful as he's been.
As I said, I watched the guy play at Sydney, and I could see and I could see he was building and building and building, and we just got him at the point where he would still had growth left in him, and yet he was third in their best and fairest. This guy's just been building and building, and he's still building, and he's got to be in the top, I reckon, half dozen players in the game.
Well, if he's not leading the Brownlow at this stage, Macca, he'd be very close, because he'd have at least 8 votes, in my opinion, after 5 rounds. And, there's probably the Dacos boy and maybe Jeremy Cameron around the place.
They'll be around.
But aside from that, and Gatesy, no, that wasn't me. Talking to Matty Nix at the post-match last week, and I know who that was. That was a bloody reporter that I don't like. His name just escapes me now, so I'm quite offended. Look, so let's just have a quick look at the team. There wasn't a lot of movement. Ned McHenry went back to sub following his good showing the week before, but it was good to see him still in the 23, but we really had no choice but to bring Pedler back in, and I don't think Pedler disappointed with his input during the game. Looked a little bit sore by the end of it, but had a good game. But again, it was just... Sorry, go on.
I was going to say Pedler was an interesting one because he had a dominant first quarter. If you go... by fantasy points, he had 33 points up in the first quarter, absolutely dominant.
Yeah,
and he disappeared for the second and third and got a couple of leg in the last. So, whether he just didn't get the opportunities or whatever, but he was very, very noticeable in the first quarter, and he finished off well. But I think there was a gap there where he wasn't so good.
Yeah, we had a couple like that. I mean, Jake Saligo was pretty quiet for the night.
Shocker.
Well, see, it wasn't a shocker because he didn't make any mistakes. He just didn't get a lot of the ball.
4 disposals.
Yeah, but he's a kid, Mac, and it's not as if we suffered because he wasn't involved. He just didn't. He was around the place quite often. He just didn't get the ball. And, a kid's going to have games like that. And the position that he was playing, it wasn't as if he wasn't getting involved. He just wasn't getting the agate.
Well, he's actually suffering a little bit from Dawson moving into the middle, because with Dawson going in the middle, and you've got Jones playing good footy on one wing, and Scholl playing good footy on the other wing, and Saligo plays either midfield or wing. He's not getting the same opportunities either. He only spent 50% ground time as well.
Yeah, well, he was subbed off for McHenry, wasn't he?
He was.
Yeah. So, and look, that's fine. it's his second season, Macca. And look, we should be learning by now that these kids just, unless they're out and out stars, and let's not forget, Jake Saligo was a mid draft pick.
41.
So, you know, so he's not in the top echelon of his draft year. He's not a hugely tall player. He's not built like a brick shithouse or anything like that. He's entitled to have an off game, and I think we need to cool our jets, firstly, when we're pumping these boys up, but secondly, when they have a few off games, because that's just what happens.
I'm a Saligo fan, don't get me wrong. I love Saligo. I think he's a great player, but Baxter said maybe he's carrying an injury or just had an off game. Well, it had to be something like that, because it did not look like the normal Saligo anyhow.
But here's the thing: we didn't suffer from his lack of involvement. Sometimes there are games where you just struggle to get involved for whatever reason. You're on the wrong side of the pack. The ball bounces the wrong way. As you say, the positional changes, Macca, are probably impacting on his role to a degree. You know, it's the same as people jumping off Sam Berry. Sam Berry has put through two of the best debut season, or the best debut and follow-up season of just about any player in the competition. You know, led the league in tackles last year, etc., etc. People are writing him off, saying he's going to struggle to get back into the team. You've got to be bloody joking me, don't you?
Well, I'm not writing Saligo off. I'm just saying he had a bad game. That was all.
No, but I mean, what I'm saying is the mentality of a lot of people to jump off and on so quickly. You know, Sam Berry is a third-year player, and he'll be an integral part of our midfield, as will Jake Saligo. So, you know, I think we've got to be careful about labelling games as shockers, Macca, when a young kid doesn't get a lot of disposal. He just had an off night. He's a young player finding his feet.
Yeah, look, the surprise to me was the fact he is always so good, so dependable, and he's there every week doing the right thing, and then we just had one that he wasn't. And then I guess that it just stood out because he is always so good.
But here's, as you rightly point out, the fact that Geordie's gone into the middle means that Jake's role has changed.
I know.
He's probably in different rotations. He's playing in different positions, you know, and that takes some time to get used to. So I'm not fussed at all. Anyway, look, before we get carried away with individuals too much, let's talk about the head-to-head scores, and we pumped them in disposals: 398 to 320, 242 kicks to 183. 156 handballs to 137. We're pretty even on inside 50s. Our disposal efficiency was 5% greater, but that efficiency inside 50, Macca, is just what's blowing teams away at the moment. We had 33 shots from 51 inside 50s compared to 21 shots from 53 from Carlton, and it's evident. It was evident to me that one of the tactics was to try and get Curnow and McKay as far up the ground as possible. And a lot of the shots that McKay missed, that Curnow missed, for example, were at or around the 50-metre mark. You know, they weren't easy shots at goal. They were long shots at goal at night with a cold ball. And it seemed to be a bit of a ploy to let him come up and take his shots from outside 50. Yeah,
I think you're right, because I thought our defence was very, very good, actually, and that they forced that situation that by putting the pressure on the forwards, that they had to lead right up and kicking from long range. Spot on there.
Yeah. Around stoppage, Rob had a very good night in terms of his hit-outs. Not sure of the hit-outs to advantage stats. They won the clearances. We won around centre, largely thanks to Geordie Dawson's work and Rory Laird's work in the middle. But they, surprisingly, they were 10 up on clearances around stoppage. But again, Macca, it was like we were speaking about the other day. It seems to me that we're not overcommitting around stoppage, and we made it very difficult, both in centre and also around stoppage, for them to get clear exits out of that congestion.
Yeah, as you say, it depends what happens with the stoppage. You know, if it's just a little fraggy thing that goes 15 metres, well, it might be just handing you back the ball.
Yep, and often that's what it turned out to be. Possessions, we had 156 to 130 contested, 240 to 181 on the outside, and turnovers relatively even. We had a lot of the ball, as you can see, they're 47% as opposed to 34% in possession. Aerially, we absolutely destroyed them, Macca. Absolutely destroyed them. 116 marks to 71, which was, indicative of our outside game. But 20 marks to 7 inside 50.
Yeah, well, that is very, very telling. And there were a couple of guys that took some very good marks up there.
Not around the ground, or 19 contested marks of 14. It's been a while since we've been consistently winning that stat as well. We haven't been noted aerially, but everyone seemed to be going all right. Even Riley Thilthorpe took a couple of strong grabs. Down back, we had people taking marks, 69 to 67 intercepts. It seemed again that our intercept across half back. I thought you remember when we were previewing this game last week, Macca, we were talking about the fact that for us to win, we were going to have to make sure that our half-backs, our third tools like Duday and Hinge and Smith would need to work very hard to assist Murray and Butts, and that's exactly what happened. I thought Duday, Hinge and Smith were all very, very good in that regard.
Now, I've actually made that very same note, Fiend, that... and I threw in Murray as well because Murray's sporting was excellent. And I just thought they would. Then McElhaney helped as well. I just thought they worked. The back line worked very well as a team.
Yep. Not a lot else to describe there in terms of the head-to-head stuff. It was just very evident that we were able to control the contest. Our movement was far more fluid. We were extremely efficient going inside 50. But the pleasing thing for me was, Macca, because I'm sure most of the people watching this podcast or listening to the podcast would agree that a lot of the old Crows PTSD nerves would have crept in at stages during the game when Carlton sort of knuckled down and started making it a contest. And at one stage, I think it got back to about 18 points or something like that. And there would have been a fair amount of people, myself included, thinking... now it's just going to be one of these classic Crows fade outs like the GWS game, or are we going to steady? And it was very, very probably the most pleasing thing to me is that we were able to withstand their pressure, and in the end we won going away.
Yeah, couldn't describe it better. And I did have a couple of heart flutters, and shouldn't have, but well,
that's because you're 105, Mac. You're entitled to have a couple of heart flutters at your age.
Mate, I've told you, I played half-back for Jerusalem.
Mrs. Macker comes out in a 90 and that's the end of it.
Now, get me my thoughts back again. No, there was a couple of times there. There was a couple of times there when they got within three goals. But what I did like about it is the fact that we took it, we steadied, and each time just went back again, away again. And the last quarter in particular, when we finished off really, really well and really put them to the sword, that was great.
Look, and it's indicative of the fact, many, including us, have been critical at times over how this rebuild has progressed and that we were very much focusing on ground ball and contested ball, etc., etc. But we're seeing the benefits now, Macca, in my opinion, of that baseline because we're a team that can roll our sleeves up as well as a team that can run and create and look like we did in that first quarter. And to me, I think that's the main difference between the way this Crows team is building and the Crows team of, say, 2015 to 2017 is that we always look vulnerable. We're always vulnerable to a counter-attack, whereas we don't seem to be quite as vulnerable to a counter-attack because we've built from that defensive base, right?
Yeah. Yeah, as I said, I thought the backline worked as a team and helped cover the other person was in trouble. They came and helped, and I thought it was really good.
Yep. So, look, it's early days, right? It's early days, and Carlton are known to be pretenders. and you could argue that there was a couple of games, or one game in particular, the GWS game, that we should have won in retrospect. So we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves, and I don't think that the club will get ahead of themselves or the players, but it certainly is. Looking as if the club is heading in the right direction, the team is heading in the right direction, and one of the big questions that we had pre-season, Macca, about Nick's ability to turn a dour defensive team into an aggressive attacking team, that's been answered, right? That's been answered.
Yeah, I thought we were very aggressive at times, and I know we're not meant. No, I'm not allowed to mention individuals yet, am I? Because there were a couple I thought that were really, really good at it.
Yeah, we'll get to individuals in a minute. It's just been pointed out to me too, Mac, that you're wearing a blue and white top.
I am.
Why?
Because I've been wearing it all day, mate. My navy is my favourite colour.
Look, I think you need to get onto the CrowCast merchandise shop and get yourself a hoodie. I'm getting myself one this week, and anyone else who wants to go and get some CrowCast merch, Macca, can go to aflcrowcast.com, and all the merch is there. There's some T-shirts and there's some hoodies and other bits and pieces, and get around it. Hopefully we'll have mine in time for next week's podcast, so I'll be able to report on what they're like. Now, we are interactive as well, Mac, and we do have a very solid studio audience today, and someone who missed out last week who always gives us some good input is Mick, and we'll invite Mick on to have a chat. How you going, Mick?
Good, thanks. And Fane, how are you going? Even if Mac wearing his North Melbourne jumper.
No, it's navy blue and white. Navy blue and white, mate. Navy blue.
Yeah, it's bloody Carlton.
That's my favourite colour, navy blue.
Okay, whatever, Macca. Yeah, I just noticed I went to the game the first time last week for the year, and I was really impressed with our centre work that game. But then coming into this game to see Dawson in the midfield is just, he's changed our midfield completely.
Yeah, totally agree.
I said to my wife that Dawson going to midfield has made us from a side to be, I was stepping around, 10, 11 on the ladder. He stays fit. I reckon 7 or 8 is possible. It's the delivery he can put into the forward line before the defenders even had a chance to blink, and it's on someone's chest. And with the forward line we've got, it's bloody hard to stop him.
He is incredible. I mean, just to prove your point, there's one stage there, he got the ball and he slipped over, and he just got up, took one step, and then pinpointed somebody right on the chest. And he's just
if you watch that bit of play, and I've watched it a couple of times, that bit of play, you're saying about Saligo having a shocker before Macca. Sligo was sitting there wide open, waiting for a hand pass when he slipped over. Now
he was.
He got up, and there was. I actually thought the same thing because I had Sligo in a draft team. And I wasn't very happy with his score. So when I look back and watch the game again, there was probably 4 or 5 times where he was just totally burnt. He was wide open, ready to go, and they just didn't give him the ball. So he just had one of those games where what didn't run his way. I'm not worried about Saligo in the slightest. He was just ignored. But another thing I will comment on, that it had to be Jones's best game.
That was what I was about to say before. Yeah, that's where I was going to, and then I thought I'd better not mention players because they always get in trouble when I do that. But
well, I won't get in trouble because I'm going to be jumping off and he can't yell at me, so I'm all right.
Oh, he was outstanding.
But, he was. He's so bloody quick. I think he's probably one of the fastest players we've got in the club, and he is so quick and he's hard. and he's actually getting confidence, and he's starting to believe he belongs out there. And I think that's been the big knock on him. I think that's the thing that's been holding him back, is he wasn't sure himself whether he belonged on the ground. I think he's starting to believe, and that's making a huge difference.
It's interesting, and you're 100% right. Like 2 years ago, when he was playing games, and I think he played about 12 games that year, and his average possessions were 8. So he had no confidence. He had no confidence in himself at that stage. Last year, he got a few games and he went a little bit better, but this is a new Jones. This is a Jones that's believing in himself. He's bulked up. He's got brilliant pace and he's got good disposal. I thought he was outstanding.
Any doubt about him believing in himself, and that goal, showed you he does believe in himself, because every other year that would have gone out and bounced the full or got a point because he would have shanked it. But he just sent that straight through the middle. Like, he believed that he could do it. And that's, I'm loving it, because if we get him back, if he actually comes through with the school, well, there's one draft pick we didn't burn. And even little Ned McHenry, like, he come on, he was only on there for a quarter, but he just come in with so much energy and so much harassment that he, in that, maybe he is a good sub because he just comes on and just smacks them.
Agree with everything you say there, Mick. Well summed up, in my opinion.
Now, Mick, your internet's not the best tonight. The mice on the wheel aren't probably running too hard. So just one more, and then we'll finish you up.
Yeah, I just got one more thing. I love Muzz's game.
Ripper.
He was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. All right, thank you.
Very good, mate. Take care.
Well done.
Good on you.
Well done, mate.
Now, I did see Gates's hand up, Mac, but there he is. Gatesy, what are we doing here? Come on, mate. How you going?
Boys? How we going?
G'day, Gatesy.
Very good.
Oh, my God. Did you guys go to the game?
No.
No, I was at a party. Oh, that night,
You
no.
always at the party, Phoenix.
No, that
You
was
always got a
Macca.
party on. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, Macca. I just want to say, my boy Darcy Fogarty had a great game coming back from injury. 5 goals, 16 disposals. Jordan Dawson, Roy Led, they played really well. And I think we kept Curnow and Cripps pretty quiet. They're probably Carlton's biggest names.
Yep.
And
100%.
Curnow had 2 goals, Cripps had 19 disposals. I just think I'm so proud of the team, and I think I've got them to win against Hawthorn next week.
Well, I think that's a pretty safe bet on paper anyhow. Who was your best 3 players, mate?
Best 3, Fogarty, Dawson, and Rochelle.
Oh, how can you go past Laird?
I was going to say,
How can you
which
go
Led?
past Laird? Jesus.
Led 37 disposals.
Come on, mate.
Nah, it's a bit biased. Rochelle's one of my favourite players, so
Yeah, no.
putting him up there.
I think the best 2 picked themselves in Dawson and Led, and it's only a question of your third one, mate.
Yeah. Rochelle burnt the ball a little bit, so he'd be down. I reckon I'd have Chase ahead of him.
Probably. Phoenix, can we talk about your tipping, mate? You're 19th.
No, we actually can't talk about my tipping. We can talk about my fantasy footing. We can definitely talk about my fantasy footy, but not my tipping. No.
What about Baxter at first? Baxter's first, 32 points.
Yeah, there's a steward's inquiry with Baxter.
Yeah, I think he's on some. He needs to be drug tested after this week.
Yeah, I think he's putting in his tips after the game. I think he's hacked the site.
Definitely.
So, thanks, Gatesy. Good on you, mate.
Thank you, boys. Thank you.
And to any other of the 25 people we've got on the studio chat, or anyone else that's chatting in the live show chat, or any of the 100 people that we've got currently watching the live stream on YouTube, Mac, if any of you guys want to come in and have your say like those 2 fine gentlemen just did, feel free. We are live and interactive, and we thank everyone who joins us and gives us their opinion, it's greatly appreciated. As long as you don't sound smarter than us, because then you get kicked off.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, Mac, let's just go through some individual players, but I want to highlight not only the overall stats, but also the first quarter stats of a couple of people. Let's have a look at Rory Laird, because Laird's first quarter was ridiculous. 16 disposals, 5 kicks, 11 handballs, 2 marks, 2 tackles, 1 goal, 1. He had 6 contested possessions. He had 10 uncontested, only turned it over twice, kicked a goal, as I said, assisted another. It was just exactly how you want Rory Laird to play, isn't it? It was a masterclass in being an inside distributor, right?
100%. In fact, his figures would have been a couple better. I think he was on the end of a couple of umpiring shockers. Once when he tackled somebody was sort of pushing the back, and then the identical thing happened to him, and it went for holding the ball, and they were only about a couple of minutes apart, and I thought, is this a Laird campaign against him or something? Shocking.
Yeah.
But Laird himself was outstanding.
Yeah, 10 centre bounce attendances, 4 clearances, 3 of them in the centre, 2 tackles, 1 inside 50, 1 rebound 50. He already had 58 fantasy points a quarter time. It was just spectacular from Laird. Dawson was the other one in the first quarter as well. He had 13 disposals, 9 kicks, 4 handballs, 2 marks, 3 tackles, kicked a point, 3 contested possessions. He's the perfect foil for a guy like Rory Laird.
Absolutely.
And I've got to also commend Riley O'Brien, not so much for his tap work, because that was its usual mixed bag, but Riley O'Brien's ability to become a secondary midfielder when the ball hits the deck. The amount of times you'll see Riley O'Brien actually get a secondary possession and dish it out to a runner, it can't be underestimated, Macca.
No, he actually, I thought he had overall a good game for that very reason.
Yeah. Anyway, Geordie, as I said, 3 contested, 8 uncontested possessions. He had 2 goal assists, took 2 marks, 2 uncontested. 250 metres gained in that first quarter, Macca.
Yeah, that was a good first quarter.
3 tackles, 4 inside 50s. Was clearly instrumental in our fast start. Those 2 lads there, irrespective of the rest of the game, those 2 lads there, it was just incredible. Along with cameos from others coming through. We had blokes running off halfback. We had blokes coming off the wing. It was just all set up, though, in my opinion, by Rory Laird, Riley O'Brien, secondary work, and Geordie Dawson, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
But then you also can't, and there was a bit of a discussion on Big Footy this afternoon about this, but you also can't underplay the fact that when we had blokes streaming through the middle, our forward line is so functional right now, and it's a real credit to James Raleigh and the staff that are working with the forwards at the moment, and the connection between the mids and the forwards, because there's a lot of space, there's a lot of options, and everyone seems to know exactly what their role is at the moment up forward. And so many times we were able to kick it straight up the bloody throat of the goals, because everyone else had cleared out and given room for whoever the designated leader was at that moment.
Yeah, that used to be one of our problems. Even last year, many times we'd be kicking to a bunch of players all the time. They hadn't spread far enough, but they are spreading at the moment, and it gives you options all over the place.
Yeah, so normally coming out of the middle like that, it'd be a high bomb into the forward line, and quite often it would either be nullified or marked by a defender, and the ball would come straight out, and we wouldn't get any value at all for those centre clearances or that transition work. But when you've got blokes like Lukey Pedler and Benny Keys willing to clear out, and even Isaac and Josh Rochelle when he's down there, willing to clear out to A, provide options, but B, to provide enough space for Tex and Fogarty and those sort of blokes to come in and have clear avenues for a lead up, it's just unstoppable.
Yeah. It's interesting because They are definitely all pulling their weight, and they're all doing it in different ways. You know, whether they're an assist or whether they are the key player involved in it, but that they're all pulling their weight.
That said, Macca, in that first quarter, I do think that we benefited from Carlton not turning up. They clearly didn't turn their clocks forward or back or wherever it needed to go. They turned up half an hour late because after quarter time they were much more accountable. But in that first quarter, they weren't chasing, they weren't running two ways. But the fact was that we took full advantage of them being off the boil, and in the end, it gave us enough of a buffer that we were able to, to not have to be too aggressive and take too many risks to keep the game under control.
Yeah, look, the first quarter in any game is always important because you can set the tone for the game if your minds are switched on, and it equally goes the other way around. Yeah, I don't think they were totally switched on. I mean, I've never seen us more switched on than we were, and it was interesting. Nick was talking about that, and he was talking about the bright lights. You're playing in the bright lights, and by that he meant you're a Thursday night. You're the only game playing. You're the first game in the gather round. All of Australia's going to be watching you. That's what he meant by being in the bright lights. And he said that what we have to do is enjoy being in the bright lights. And I think he just got their minds tuned right. And Carlton, who regularly get some type of games, went off, and they weren't.
Yeah. I mean, we're still yet to see our side in a real pressure cooker environment like a final, etc. But it is, again, something that I was alluding to at the beginning of the podcast, how we look less flaky. We have a propensity in big games in the past to get overawed and or to let a big lead slip because of that flakiness. But as I said earlier on, the difference now is that we have that work ethic and that blue collar nature to our side, that when we need to roll up our sleeves, we seem to be able to do so. And there were various times during the night where Carlton did get a little bit of momentum and had a bit of control of the game, but it didn't hurt us too much on the scoreboard because we were able to turn it into a contest, which wouldn't have been the case previously, Macca, with previous squads. We were prone to giving up a lot of goals during momentum shifts, whereas that doesn't seem to be, over the last couple of weeks at least, we seem to have tightened that aspect up.
And that comes down to how many players are still giving their all. And the interesting thing was that, I pointed out Sligo had a one-off bad game, but if you look at all the players on the ground, it's very, very hard to find another player that you would say had a stinker. I thought that they all kept at it all day.
Well, see, there you go, saying that Sligo had a stinker.
No, I'm not saying. I said he had. I had started off by saying he had an off day, and I said, but none of the players. You're trying to put words in my mouth.
No, I'm not. Not at all.
Let's not argue about grammar. Let's talk about players.
I don't know. I've never met your grandma, so all right. Let's talk about players. The other one that let's look at Leddy's full game stats, shall we? Because they were pretty impressive. He had 37 disposals, 11 kicks, 26 handballs, which is a bloody lot, but they were all going to targets. 3 marks, 6 tackles, kicked 1 goal, 2. As you can see from his heat map there, did most of his work in between the arcs, but did get back and forward a little bit. 70% disposal efficiency, Macca's pretty good. 18 contested possessions, if you don't mind, 22 uncontested. And with all those possessions, only turned it over 5 times. Had 15 score involvements, Macca. So he was involved in the chain a lot of the time when we were able to get the ball into scoring positions. Obviously, aerially, 3 marks, they were all uncontested. 295 metres gained, which is still good considering he's working in tight. His clearance work, 9 clearances, 6 at the middle, 3 around stoppage, 6 tackles, 2 inside 50s, 1 rebound 50. And as I said at the outset, that was probably the perfect game from your inside mid.
Yeah, he's going to get 2 Brownlow votes. Definitely going to get 2.
Yep. Geordie's full game stats: 32 kicks, 32 disposals, 21 kicks, 11 handballs, 4 marks, 9 tackles. Only kicked a point. He had 10 contested and 18 uncontested possessions. Only turned it over 5 times out of 32 touches. 11 score involvement, Smacker. Took 4 marks, 537 metres gained. Attended 28 centre bounces for 7 clearances, 5 at centre, 2 at stoppage, 9 tackles, 10 inside 50s, 1 rebound 50. As I've said the last couple of weeks, he's our Bontempelli / Pendlebury / whatever other big midfielder you want to. And he wasn't directly on Cripps much of the time. But he gave Cripps a bath.
Absolutely, and there's 3 Brownlow votes there. His game is enormous, and you've got to add in the accuracy of his kicking as well, Pete.
Well, that's the thing, those inside 50s, I'd love to know the stat of how many resulted in goals or shots on goal, because I reckon it'll be all 10.
Yeah, I think I did hear that. I think it was 9 out of 10.
Yeah. So, he's been a revelation. The test for Geordie is going to be when he starts getting some attention. And he will get attention, Mac. He'll start getting scragged. He'll start getting blocked. I reckon the next month is going to be really key for him, particularly against Collingwood and St Kilda.
Yeah, I have a lot of faith in him. He's not a guy who gets thrown by anything. I thought at times they did try to block him, I watched him, and he just sort of accepts it until the ball is in the air, and then he starts to move. And he's a star. And you're right, they'll try and curtail him, but some days they may succeed, but it's going to be hard for them.
Well, the thing of it is, the thing that I like about Geordie, and it's a quality that those 2 other players that I mentioned had, particularly in their halcyon days, is he keeps his feet, Mac. He gets buffeted and blocked and bumped and all the rest of it, but he doesn't go to ground.
Yep.
And as long as he's up on his feet, he's dangerous. And he gets his arms free. He's able to, and he's got good support at the moment from blokes running past and our outside players, our wingmen, and running halfbacks, etc. But his ability to keep his feet and to clear the ball out of congestion is what makes him really, really valuable. And it is very comparable to those other 2 players I mentioned.
His vision and his ability to spot targets is so quick compared to the average player. And then it's the perfect pass onto their chest. He's just so good. So,
and I want to just put to you, Mac, that I know that I have to keep dragging you back into the present because you like bringing up, draft losses and all the rest of it that we've had in the past. But when you look at it as a whole and you see that we got Jordan Dawson for pick 18, and you think to yourself, I'd hate to be a Swan supporter.
Oh, yeah, they would be spewing. And I think they are spewing, apparently, when they see a guy like Dawson. Because he was still in growth mode, Pete. He was starring, and he was their third and best and their best and fairest, but he was on the way up. If you draw his graph, he was still on the way up. As you can see by the fact of where he's got to in the 2 years with us.
Yeah. So it swings and roundabouts, mate. You get some hits and you get some misses, and some blokes go higher than they should, and some blokes are a bargain. And, Geordie was a bit of a bargain, and he will be a linchpin for our midfield for a very long time, in my opinion. And I say all of that because the next bloke I want to talk about is Chase Jones, who has been subject to a lot of scrutiny over the journey. And I would consider that this game was pretty much a breakout game for Chase. 28 disposals, 18 kicks, 10 handballs, 9 marks, 1 tackle, kicked a beautiful goal. He had 11 contested possessions, 18 uncontested possessions, 8 turnovers, 8 intercept possessions, took 9 marks all on the outside, 1 mark inside 50, of course, which resulted in that goal. 446 metres gained. He had 2 clearances around stoppage, 4 inside 50s, 4 rebound 50s, so he's running up and back. I dare say that Chase Jones is benefiting from having a very defined role, Macca, in a very organised team.
Well, he had a very good game last week, but as you say, this was the breakout game where he looked like he was one of the stars of the game. And, and as I say in the chat, cemented his spot. And, he's actually worked, and he must have worked very, very hard because he's bulked up, he's strong, but he hasn't lost any of his pace. He's got electric pace, and his kicking, I thought, was excellent. Overall, he hit most targets with his kicks. And, you and I, we're guilty, but most of South Australia is. We bagged him, and we said, how the hell did we get it? How did we get a player like Jones no good at that pick number? We're all guilty of it.
Don't roll me into your criticisms, mate.
No, I'm rolling you right into it, mate. Yeah, I'm wrapping you right up to it because we all did it. But he has proved us wrong, and I'm glad he has. And I'll say give an apology to him because he is a damn good player, and he is going to be. He should really use that as confidence now to be the really good player that he can be.
Yeah, I'm going back through the video like Scoot suggests, and congrats, Scoot, for I think you got off the donuts in fantasy this week. Well done. Yeah, look, I really just think that, like, remember how many times we used to say that Chase looked lost on the field, and I just feel like he has a very clear role now in a side that is improving. Obviously drafted at 6 or wherever he was, we're expecting or hoping, I guess, that he would be a linchpin in the midfield. It didn't turn out to be that way. And therefore, we spent a fair bit of time trying to work out where he fit, Mac. And at the same time, our team was very young and inexperienced and very disorganised. And I really do think that now that we have some structure and we have some good players, and the heat is off Chase to deliver on pick 6, and he can just go out and play with a very clear role and a very clear head. He's doing exceptionally well.
And I'm so pleased that we were wrong, Pete. I'm pleased that he's actually becoming the player that he is, and I love it. I just loved his game.
Yeah, I must admit, it's a real feel good story from my perspective. And look, again, long way to go, but his trajectory is heading in the right direction. I feel like he's playing the right role for this team right now, and good on him. All right, now another bloke that, and no one can accuse me of this, but certainly others, Macca. Others jumped off Tom Duday like he was on fire. And I just want a few of those people, and I think yourself is one of them. I certainly think Peter J is another if he's listening. 24 disposals, 17 kicks, 7 handballs, 10 marks, 1 tackle, 84% of his work done in the back half, of course. 18 uncontested possessions, 6 contested, 8 intercept possessions, 5 score involvements, 488 metres gained. I haven't got his spoil stats here because I'm just using the phone app, but he was integral to us being able to hold the Twin Towers of Curnow and McKay. Best game I've seen Tom play for ages, but he finally looks to be playing the right role as that third man up and injury-free.
Well, I'm not guilty of bagging the living daylights out of Duday. He had... No, you try, mate. Always try and throw it on me. And Peter J is very guilty of it. But
very good. No, jumped off jumped off very hard, Pete. If you're listening, jumped off very, very hard.
He did. But no, he had some quiet games, but I thought he was outstanding and definitely our best players on the weekend. And as you say, playing the role that he is best at, which is as the intercept player. And and he saved us time and time again with his intercepts. And he was high in our best players.
Yep. Now, a lot of people were speculating that he'd go to Geelong. He still hasn't signed, obviously. And a lot of people weren't disappointed that he was going to go to Geelong, and people were licking their lips about what we'd get for Compo and all the rest of it. I don't reckon any compensation that we'd get from Duday, and I don't think we'd get anything higher than a band 2, probably band 3, would compensate us for what he gives our side.
I don't want to lose him. No, I want us to re-sign him.
Yep. So hopefully he does. Hopefully he's on board with what's happening. He's obviously in our leadership group. Certainly his socials reflect that he's fully on board. And look, people in this chat are saying that he's benefiting from other players stepping up. Well, that's exactly right. That's part of what playing in a team is all about. And when Tom had to cover the second tall and be a lockdown defender and all the rest of it, and he was playing with a broken hand for half the season last year, that's not who Tom Duday is. He's a solid third man up, can play tall or small, and provides us with a very good outlet as well. And that's the role that he played against Carlton on Thursday night, and he played it to perfection.
Yeah, no, he played a slashing game. And, some of the past games, I think it was late last year, he played with a broken hand. His form might have not been so good. But, no, he's been building. He hasn't been quite where he should have been, but he was spot on the weekend.
Yeah, and a lot of people have been critical of our defence and the fact that it's a bit hodgepodge, and you and I have spoken about our doubts about Brodie Smith in particular and Wayne Miller in particular. Both those lads had pretty decent games on Thursday night. Probably the best game I've seen Junior play for a while, and Brodie Smith was very solid without too many brain farts. The one, though, that I think has really made a difference is Mitch Hinge in that back six.
Oh, you stole another line I was going to raise, Fee. But Hinge is good on a wing, but he is so much better in the back lines because he had a top game down back. And as you say, they played as a team. Duday intercepting. Hinge mopped up some of the stuff that got passed. He's also good at ground level. And he's got good disposal coming out the back lines. No, I thought he had a good game, really good game.
Yep, 24 touches, 18 kicks, 6 handballs, 7 marks. He had 14 uncontested possessions, 8 contested possessions. Only turned it over 4 times, had 8 intercepts, 1 goal assist, 9 score involvements back from halfback. Took 7 marks, 1 contested and 6 uncontested. 430 metres gained. 2 inside 50s, 2 rebound 50s. I've always liked him. He can at times ball watch a little bit. He can at times just have a little bit of a brain fade, and he is very left-sided. He hasn't got a right side at all. Probably even worse than bloody Benny Keys in that regard. But his left foot is laser-like. Probably second only to Geordie in our team in terms of being able to lace out passes. And I think that Tom and Mitch are a very good combination of medium-sized, agile, athletic, third tools in our defence.
Totally agree, Fane. And they both played well.
Yep. Without running through too many other players, Miller had 23 touches, 14 and 9. Smithers had 21 and 14 and 7. I thought Brodie played particularly well, actually. His best game for a while. Sloaney had 17 touches, 7 and 10. I thought he did what he needed to do, Rory, and he stood up in... The good thing about having Sloaney in the team, in my opinion, is when the game comes back to him a bit, he's rock solid, and he did some really good things in the. We're able to move him into the mid rotations when we need a cool head, and that grab that he took up forward that ended up in Fogarty's hands for that nice goal was just indicative of the fact that he does play tall and he's great overhead.
Yeah, I've got nothing much to add to that because I think you summed it up beautifully. And we doubted at the beginning of the year that whether he could actually hold his place in the team because of the fact that we had so many young players on the rise, and Rory was coming back from a very serious injury. But I'm very, very pleased to see that Sloaney, well, he's playing very good footy, and he has got a calm head when things are going against us. And it's good to see him back. And I don't think he'll be there next year, but I think he's good for us this year.
Well, he's got a role to play and he's playing it. And, while that's happening, we can't complain. Benny Keys, 9 and 7, kicked 3 goals. His work rate is second to none. His ability to create options and create space is invaluable there. And he's another one where we just need a fresh set of legs and a bit of energy through the midfield. We can chuck him in for a few rotations. Let's see how many rotations he actually came in for. Took 5 marks, 6 contested possessions, 11 uncontested, only turned it over twice. Had 9 score involvements. Let me just see. Only attended 2 centre bounces, but one of those was a clearance, Mac, and that's the value of him, that you can chuck him into the middle and he'll give you some energy. That's his value.
He was worth more than that because he actually he tagged Sard out of the game. Sard is the one who gives him great drive from the back lines, and he neutralised Sard to a great effect.
I don't think that he tagged Sard. I think that Sard was particularly unaccountable. They were playing on each other, no doubt about it. They were playing on each other. But I don't think it was necessarily a hard tag from Keys. I think that Sard played off him.
Well, I think that was the plan, though, is to put Keys on Sard because he's done it before. And, and Sard had very little impact on the game.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I think Sard is a bit soft, actually. And Keys will just outwork him, basically. And that's what Benny did. He just outworked him. He didn't try to shut him down. Sard still, I think, had 17 possessions or something like that, which is down for him, but still 17 touches. But they weren't terribly effective. And, any defender that has 3 goals kicked on them by the 6th forward has not had a good game.
Exactly right.
Yep. Darcy Fogarty had an excellent game. It's so good to see him come on and take the game by a scruff of the neck. 13 kicks, 3 handballs, took 10 marks, kicked 5-3 Macca, and 5 contested possessions, 10 uncontested, only turned it over once, as you'd expect. 12 score involvements. His marks inside 50, 7 of his 10 marks were inside 50, 3 of them were contested. It's just, him and alongside Chase Jones, so maligned in their last few seasons. It's fantastic. I'm so happy to see Darcy step up like this. Yep.
It was in Darcy's hands to do it. And he finally got really serious about wanting to be the player that he's capable of being. And he's getting there very, very fast. I thought he was outstanding on the weekend. Not weekend, Thursday.
Yeah. Tex also played well for 3 goals, 3, had 10 and 5 with 9 marks. Isaac, relatively quiet, I thought, but did enough when the ball was in his area. I thought Geordie Butts was reasonably good down there, although Nick Murray, I think, even though they had almost identical stats, Nick Murray seemed to be the one that was aerially far more winning far more aerial contests, Nick, against both Curnow and Harry Mackay at times.
I think Murray's gold, absolute gold. I mean, he's a raw recruit country boy that's rolled up, and they picked him up, and it was a mid-season draft off memory. And, he's strong. He's got an enormous leap on him. He's got no fear whatsoever. And he's just getting better and better as he plays more and more games, he's getting better. I love him as a player. And I thought, again, when you play against the quality of the players that he was on the weekend, and, they've been taking other good players to the cleaners. No, well done by Murray.
Yeah. And just on Rankin again, real quickly, I forgot to mention that first goal that he kicked from Eddie's pocket on the wrong side. That was just spectacular.
Wasn't it just? We could see the Cameron lined it up beautifully, and you thought, geez, he can't really kick that, can he? But
no,
he
it's the wrong angles, but he snuck it through. It was a very good goal. Max was serviceable, 10 and 7, did what he needed to do. Same with Riley Thilthorpe, I thought. Did what he needed to do, took a nice couple of clunking marks there, which is what you want to see, and he's just sort of building nicely. I felt like we used Thilthorpe a little bit sort of to keep Waitering under control. Like half the time it felt like we were kicking the ball away from Riley, and Waitering, obviously being their tallest defender, had to go with him.
Yeah, that's
it was a
probably
bit hard
a very
to
good
tell
point
on the TV though.
Well, Waitering's an outstanding backman, and if he can get into the play, he marks everything that comes along. He's probably one of the very, very best in the AFL. So you could well be right with that tactic, Bean, because Thilthorpe was on him a lot, and it did keep him out of the play quite a bit.
Yeah, and when he got up the game, and I also thought Riley did quite well when he got on the ball. Lukey Pedler started off like a gun, like you said. I love this kid. I can't wait until his tank builds and his body holds up a little bit more, because he did look sore by the end of the game a couple of times there, and it looked. I hope it's not osteoarthritis pubis, because a few times he looked like he was stretching his abdomen and through the groin areas. So I hope he holds up, because he's an absolute jet. It's almost turning into my favourite player, Luke Pedler.
Well, a fit Pedler is a very, very good player, and he can be not only a weapon, a half forward flank. When he gets a fair few games behind him and gets his fitness to absolutely superb condition, he can be a midfielder as well, and a very damaging midfielder as well. So
no doubt about it. He will be a bull in the midfield, Mac. He really will.
Yeah.
If you can imagine, rotations of Laird, Berry, Pedler, busting packs, and then, Geordie and Rochelle and maybe a bit of Rankin for the Silk. It's a very good 6 or 7 man rotation.
It is, isn't it? And that's what you need. You need that depth.
Yeah. And Nettie, when he came on, I thought was really good too. Provided energy, kicked a goal, up and about. And it's, he's doing everything that you'd ask of him. And it's not bad to have these guys on the fringes, Mac, like McHenry, and Murphy's another one who I thought was quite good. These blokes that'll come in and do a job, it's not bad to have them around there, putting pressure on the first 22.
Yeah, Mercy might not be the best player in the team, but by God, he's one of the bravest in the team. He puts his body and his head in where I wouldn't.
Well, as I said, we're using him correctly. We're playing him as a high half forward, but we're not dump kicking onto his head. We're using him as a secondary around stoppage, and we're using him as a link-up player and a bloke that can break up defensive exits out of our forward 50. That's his role. He's excellent at ground level. He's underrated by foot. He's great around stoppage, and he's playing his role. And I think that's where things are starting to click, maybe even for the coaching panel, Mac, is that the team is starting to take shape in terms of where players are best suited.
Exactly. I think that's 100% correct. And Dawson into the midfield and the shuffles that around that have really formulated where players play, and I'd say every player at the moment is playing in their right spot. He said, well, we say Pedler could eventually be a midfielder, but at the moment he's more suited to the half-forward flank. So, yeah, I think you got it right. I think that at the moment every player is probably playing in the right spot.
Yep. You know, and if you have a look at our bloody SANFL team that's going to be going on the deck next week, you got Gallant and McAdam up forward with Himmelberg. You've got Harry in the middle with, Zach Taylor and those blokes. You got they'll beat whoever they're playing by about 50 goals, I reckon. Worrell down back.
I know, it's a very good team. Yeah, you mentioned McAdam. I mean, he is so good. It's hard to think that he can't come back in the side, but where does he come back?
Well, it's an interesting question that you raise, because it's very easy to forget what Shane brings, because it's not only the flashy marks and all the rest of it. He does a lot of good work defensively when he's on board, and when he's switched on. I still think he's a valuable part of the team, Macca, and had he not been suspended, he wouldn't have been dropped, and we wouldn't be seeing McHenry, or Murphy potentially. It's going to be an interesting one to see how they slot him in.
Yeah, I mean, he's too good a player not to be in the side.
I think he has to be in.
Because he's good, and he's good at ground level. He'll have a run in the twos this week. But, you'd think that next game, he's got to be really considered, and I don't know where.
Well, I think maybe he forms part of a rotation with Keys and Murphy, Macca, so that we can change up the way that we look. They're all defensive players, as well as offering some attacking flair. They offer something different, but I think that's probably where that sits. I think you have Murphy and Keys as ground level sort of energizer bunnies, but you can chuck McAdam into there as well as something a little bit difficult, and that's different, and that's what makes us difficult to match up on. I think that's probably how that works. Who comes out though? God, I really don't know. I really don't know. Whoever it is, and this is the beauty of it, whoever it is that comes out is going to be damn unlucky.
Absolutely. And you've also got Berry, who was always a first choice player, and he obviously wasn't 100% right, and now he's hopefully back pitching well again. I think he'll probably play a game or two in the twos to get his form right back up again, but then he will be wanting to force his way back into the side, and so at his best, he's definitely in the side. So we're actually getting into a situation where instead of just having 22 good players, we're probably getting to that 25, 26 good player mark, which is what you need.
Yeah. Harry and Sam are probably fighting for Jake Saligo's spot at the moment. You would have put Chase into that category at the moment, but I think Chase has put a bit of a distance between himself and the SANFL team. Rory Sloane eventually will come into that conversation, I think, as well. But you're dead set right, Macca. This is exactly the squad profile that you want, where you've got blokes that could very easily be picked in the first 22 that aren't being picked at the moment.
Yeah, and on the weekend I was looking at our whole squad in totality, and if you wanted to, normally it's very normal to delist 5 to 6 players at the end of each season. And I was looking through there, and I struggled to find 5 or 6 I would want to delist. So we're starting to get somewhere, because a lot of our boys that aren't playing in the team are only first or second year players, and you've got to give them an opportunity to build up their tanks and their engine and their getting used to the higher levels and all that sort of stuff. So Yeah, it's going to be interesting at year end because there's not too many there that are passengers.
Well, and I think we as supporters are going to have to get used to a very difficult fact, and hopefully, well, it'll be very interesting to see how the club deals with this and maintains culture. Some of these blokes are going to be trade bait.
Well, it could be interesting because that's what a lot of clubs do, of course. I mean, Port did that with Amon, who was, I thought, close to their best player last year, and is probably and he's playing very good football for Hawthorn. But that gave them a draft pick, which enabled them to do trades. So, yeah, and we might be maybe not so much in this year, but certainly I reckon by the end of next year, certainly we'll be in that position.
Yeah, there will be a couple of players who feel like they could be first 22 in another club that will seek opportunities somewhere else. And there'll be a couple of players that, for whatever reason, are just outside of our first pick, and we can use them in trades for others. This it's been stated by the club that over the next couple of years we'll be active traders. Not so much relying on the draft. And don't forget, we've got a couple of good prospects coming through, father, son, etc. over the next year or two. We've got Max's brother, we've got Tyler Welsh. All of a sudden, in a squad of 40-odd, things are a little bit tight. We probably need to bring on a young developing ruckman at some point. So blokes like Braden Cook and Nankervis and these lads that have been on the list for a couple of years, they're going to be pushing to stay on the squad, stay on the list.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting, and because also the one very lads that you mentioned, they could also be building their games up so well by the end of the year that you want to retain them because they're going to play next year.
Absolutely. So a very interesting time, like all great problems to have. But the thing that you want to be very careful of, and the thing I reckon that is most difficult to manage in those situations, is not destroying your culture and your team spirit by getting rid of a couple of blokes that are integral to that. So. As long as the club can have good, honest conversation with its players, and the players are aware that it's still a professional environment and these things happen, because the list can't stay stagnant. It has to evolve, and it's by no means, in my opinion, at its peak. There are still, we've got Brodie Smith coming towards the end of his career, Rory Sloane's coming towards the end of his career, Tex Walker's coming towards the end of his career. We've got a few blokes on the fringes that we might decide to upgrade, and a couple of blokes that just might want to leave for whatever reason. So, as the club becomes more successful, there's going to be players like Isaac and Geordie that want to come and play with us. So it's going to be a very interesting period as we rise back up the ladder, but a very good position to be in.
Yeah, so that's the long term. This year, I think we've won the last 3 in a row. We could really have been 5 in a row. I think the draw got us with having to play GWS the very first game in heat and humidity, and we ran out of legs in the last quarter, and that in itself, and within a 5-day break and playing Richmond, and then we ran out of legs again in the last quarter. If we just played somebody else, and not in that particular heat, I think that we could possibly be undefeated at this stage.
Agreed, Macca. I agree with that.
So I think we're going well. The test will be when we play the really, really big boys, and looking forward to that. That will tell us where we're really at. Yeah,
100%. It's, as I said, it's a good position for us to be in as a club. It just needs to be managed well, and it'll be very interesting to see as the season develops how that plays out.
Yep.
So next week we've got who have we got? We got bloody Hawthorn down in Tassie just to come back down to earth after gather round. Danger game, in my opinion. Massive danger game.
Well, I think we're playing Hawks down in Tasmania. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, watching them, Hawks are, they're in that stage where they're developing and starting off from a fairly low base, but they still have some players in their team that can do very good things, and they can't seem to maintain it all game, but they can have some very, very damaging passages of play and periods of play. So we would want to be serious about it if we want to win the game, because otherwise, if we went there with thinking, yeah, we'll win this game, and we weren't switched on like we were in this particular game, that's the type of game you can drop if you're not careful.
Yep. And as we keep saying, it's a shame to waste good wins with soft losses, right? We haven't done particularly well in Tasmania. There's been at least one game that I recall in recent memory where we, gave up an 11 goal. Didn't we kick 11 goals straight and lose? In the first quarter, we kicked 11 goals straight and lost. So, it's just another test. And I think, this season is all about, I forget which commentator what it was, but I felt like it was a very good comment that was made. It might actually have been David King, which really pains me to say that, but it's about ticking off little milestones, right? And one of those little milestones will be a solid win in Tasmania. Another one will be a win against Geelong at GMHBA Alphabet Stadium. These little milestones that you want to tick off as you progress and as you rise up the ladder. And this one this week against Hawthorn, who showed a little bit this week at a venue that we don't particularly like and is always uncomfortable to play at. That's going to be just another little test for us.
Yeah, that's a very good summary there, Ben, because if we want to make the 8, and we certainly do, we would have to win all the games we should win and not squander those. And if we think, to be better than we are regarded as, we'd have to knock off Geelong at Geelong. I think that is always one of the very hard ones to do because they have a huge winning rate there. Another one is, I don't know whether we play Brisbane up in Brisbane, but they won 31 of their last 36 or something like that. Yeah. If you win those games, then you're going somewhere.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, and that's obviously another one of those little milestones. But the one coming up, what do you reckon, mate? What's our chances?
We will win, and I'm going to say that we'll win by 42 points.
42 points?
Yep.
Interesting. I'm not that bullish. I think it's going to be tight.
There will be tight periods. Yeah, I believe there'll be tight periods, but I also believe there will be passages where we will get away from them.
Yeah, I think we will win. I think it'll be a close game. I think we'll win by probably about 10 points in the end. What we will benefit from the most, Macca, I think, is the 9-day break. I think a few of our boys will be very happy to have a bit of a rest.
That's one of the reasons for my confidence being that, we've been playing games with 5-day breaks and doing well. And a 9-day break will be just like heaven to our players.
Yeah. Well, and that's, it either takes them off the boil or it refreshes them. And that's, the coach's job and the fitness staff job, etc. To make sure that doesn't happen. But look, I think we will win. I think it'll be quite tight. I think the Hawks would be smarting after their loss to the GWS, but they would have taken some confidence that they were able to compete against the Giants. So it'd be a very interesting game. Now, before we finish up, mate, we've just got to go through some things. Now, bloody C's girl has jumped me again on the ladder. I won't put them up, but I'll just read out. So we had Billy, Sam, Mark. Billy and Sam got 9. Mark, Crow's girl, Nikki, Peter, Martin, Brad, and Jonathan and Josh got 8. I got 5, Mac. I was on the wrong side of a couple of upsets. You know, I was on Gold Coast and I was on bloody St Kilda, and they got me.
No, I did. I got 7. I thought that was good because I'm a hopeless tipper.
Yeah. So at the moment, in terms of the leaderboard, as Gatesy pointed out, Baxter's in front on 32, Mark's on 31 along with Josh Grotato. Then we got Hammerific on 30, Sam G on 29, a few on 28, and then down to little old me on 24, Macca. I slipped badly.
Oh, they're in the same category as me, mate.
Yeah, I've never been a great tipper. On the other hand, fantasy footy this year has been pretty interesting. So, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious beat Crow's Girl fairly comfortably. Iron Fist got off the mark with a win over Brad. Phoenix Forward Entries, just another solid win, just coming up the ladder against Chris. We had the no-names, Tom C getting up over Bayside Crow. Scoot got off the mark with a win against a booking accident. A bunch of unique individuals went down by a point to Mick Spud for his first loss of the year, Tom. Shady's All-Stars got up also against Glenn. Another close game. Tony just got up over Jad. Jad's, I think Jad's going really well, actually. I think he's bloody in the top 3,000 or 4,000. Let me have a look. Pretty sure he is. Let's have a look at Jad. Where are you, Jad? Yeah, he's 1980, which is pretty good. Pretty good.
That's very good.
Yeah, he lost this week, unfortunately. Jad, what else happened? Something else happened. I've lost my place now. Oh, wrong round. Come on, get it together. 1990 Crows just having a bad time. He only got 1 in the tips. I reckon he must have forgotten to put his tips in. So he's right down the bottom. And he had a loss, had his first loss for the season against John C. So it's little wonder that 1990 is scarce on the chat tonight, because he'd be licking his wounds, I'd imagine. So don't forget, those are involved in our competitions. There is some prizes on the end of it. So stay engaged in those. Don't forget to, I think I've put it in Discord. I was a bit late. The monthly giveaway is up and running. So go to the competition channel on our Discord server to enter that one. 1990 did win the T-shirt, so he has won. He's won something this month, so that's good, Mac. I don't feel so bad in giving him a hard time. And if you do want to get around our Discord server, don't forget, if you're listening on YouTube or on one of the podcast channels, the links for the Discord server are in all our socials and in our profiles on YouTube and Twitter, etc. So come on board. We've got 325 members in our Discord channel at the moment, Mac, which is pretty good. Currently 58 are joining us either on the stage or just in the chat, which is fantastic. So the community is really growing. We appreciate everyone's support, both on YouTube and also in Discord and on the audio platforms. We copped a bit of a serve on iTunes the other day, Mac, but I think we're a bit of a victim because it was after the Richmond debacle where we had technical difficulties and all the rest of it. So hopefully, I can't remember who it was, some grumpy bastard gave us a negative review, so I hope he stuck around and hope he's enjoyed the lack of technical glitches that we've had since then. But if you do want to leave us a review on iTunes, please go ahead and do so. All input and feedback is most valuable. Mac, I reckon we've done it.
Yeah, we've done it. I think there's no more to come.
No, I think we've done it. Don't forget, we'll be back again next Sunday for the weekend wrap following the Tassie game. In the meantime, have a good week, everyone. Stay safe, and we will see you next week.
Yep. Good night, all.